First and foremost, I bring you greetings from my dear wife, Beatrice. Beatrice and I have been married for the last 37 years. And we have two adult children. Our firstborn is a daughter, and she is married, and we are the proud grandparents of 3 grandchildren. And we thank God for our family. We thank God for experience and the privilege to live in a family situation. It's one of the great blessings of life that God gives us, the blessing of family. We have the blessing of salvation in God's family, and that's really wonderful. But also the blessing of our families here on earth is a big one, and we give him thanks, because even on the subject matter that we're talking about, the family plays a very, very big and important role. I want to say that the nature of my work has brought me face to face with this challenge of teenage pregnancies. We began Family Life Network in 2002. So that's what, 19 years ago? Yes, next year will be 20 years. And dealing with families, dealing with the students, dealing with the pupils, you don't go far before you engage with this problem. And so, to me, this is something that I've had firsthand experience with, rub shoulders with it, and so on. And what I can say is that teenage pregnancy is a symptom of a bigger problem. It is not the problem, but it is a symptom of the problem. And I want to share my thoughts in a presentation, if it's okay, if I'm allowed to share. Yes, it's good. Yes, there we are. The challenge of teenage pregnancies. If it's okay, I think let me remove my camera and just present. All right. So the challenge of teenage pregnancy. As I mentioned, the teenage pregnancy is a symptom of a deeper thing. And I want to share some information and some perspective and some background and some sources or foundations of what we see around, which will help us know better how to handle this important subject. My training as an electrical engineer helps me to look at the problem and look for its root cause, because in engineering, you need to understand the principle of whatever it is that you're working on. And it is on the basis of understanding that principle that you bring out solutions. I mean, for example, engineers have understood aerodynamics, and and out of understanding aerodynamics, engineers can make a plane, something of 400 tons, and can fly over the Atlantic Ocean and will not just drop, because you've understood the principle. And once you've understood that, you then know what to do. If a problem comes from one direction, because you know the principle, you know what. If it comes from another one, similarly, you know what to do. And so for me, this matter of teenage pregnancy, I want to look at it from its root cause. Its root cause. What is the issue here? So let me just throw some information around. First, we need to look at the global conflict. When we were younger, we saw the Cold War. And that time, the Cold War was an arms race. But after the collapse of the Soviet Union, the Cold War changed to now an ideological war or cultural warfare. And the issue today, therefore, is whose ideas will society run on? Whose culture will carry the day? Who will determine what people do? That's where we are today. And so today, most of the global or globalization is being fueled by secular humanist ideology or philosophy. And we don't have much time to go into it, but the media, the education, programs are all tools that are being used to advance. This is because since it is an ideological warfare now, people are bringing out everybody who wants to dominate the world brings their ideas and sees that the idea runs the education system, runs the media, programs that come around, goals that are set, all come from that. Now we need to be cognizant of this. In other words, it's ideas that run the world. The former British Prime Minister during the Second World War, Sir Winston Churchill, said that empires of the future will not be empires of territory, but empires of the mind. In other words, somebody will hold territory physically, but somebody else will determine what that person thinks, when they sleep, how they handle their sexuality, and so on and so forth. Now, this is something that we need to be cognizant of. This is what's going on. Now, most of these ideologies and so on, which are current today, actually tend to destroy our morality and inevitably destroy our families. Whether we like it or not, whether we, you believe it or not, you just need to look around and you see for yourself what actually is going on. Well, why are families important? Why is morality important? Why can't we? In fact, today, morality is something which is like a swear word. People don't want to hear that word. Everybody has a right. And moreover, my moral may not be like yours. Well, let's begin with the family. As goes the family, so goes the nation. If anything injures the family, the nation will not remain intact. It has to go, whether it likes it or not. So you injure family in any way, you're injuring the nation. Now, what about morality and sexuality, the very thing that we're talking about now? Why is it important? Well, let's first see the definition. And this is a definition I got from a dictionary. There are many, but this one I want to just zero in. It says that morality is a custom of a given society, class, or social group, which regulate relationships and prescribe modes of behavior to enhance the group's survival. Now, I usually wonder, why did the person writing this add those last 4 words, which are put in bold? Why didn't they just stop there before those 4 words? Well, common sense will tell you that there is a connection between morality and the survival of any group. Okay, that's what common sense, will tell you. Well, it's actually true. 2 world-class social scientists did studies in the last century. One of them, a British doctor, Dr. D.J. Unwin, and the other one, Petrin Sorokin, a Russian gentleman. And these gentlemen independently studied the last 5,000 years of human recorded history. And they both came to the same conclusion, having studied their study separately and independently. They discovered that every civilization, or most civilizations, take that kind of path where it begins in a small way, rises to prominence, reach a plateau, and then eventually go down. And they discovered that the same thing always comes before the collapse of any civilization. Two things. One, spiritual corruption, and inevitably followed by moral corruption. And they actually found out that from the time those corruptions take place to the total collapse of a civilization takes between 30 years to 66 years. Meaning that there's no record in history where a civilization has managed to survive over 100 years when it has embraced immorality, when it has embraced promiscuity. It's not there. Well, look at Dr. Unwin's conclusion when he did his studies. He said, in human records, there is no instance of a society retaining its energy after complete new generation has inherited a tradition which it does not insist on. Now, that's an old word for sexual purity or abstinence, and then that other word is for faithfulness in marriage. So if we put those new current words, it reads like this. In human records, there's no instance of a society retaining its energy after a complete new generation as a native, which does not insist on abstinence or sexual purity and faithfulness in marriage. Now, these are studies. This is not, we've not even opened our religious books or anything. This is just observing society and seeing where society is going according to the way they handle issues of morality. Then, look at what Sorokin, and I don't know what this guy's religious background is. Maybe he was a communist, I don't know. But he went to America in the 60s, late 60s. And you know that the 60s was a time of the sexual revolution. And he told Americans that, look, you guys, you're committing voluntary suicide through unrestrained sexual indulgence. It was like, you guys, are you mad? Are you mad? You are just committing suicide. And it's as though he was a prophet. He predicted that there will be population decline, that there will be increase in divorce, there will be increase in family desertion, and there will be an epidemic of sexual promiscuity resulting in a rise of illegitimate children. Sorokin saw it. Sorokin saw it when he just saw how Americans were fooling around with their sexuality during the sex revolution time as it was beginning. Have these things happened? They have happened. To the point that now illegitimate children in America is now a political problem. When President Trump was coming into office, their manifesto, one of the things they were talking about, they were blaming the Obama administration for governing the country in such a way that illegitimate children, because 40% of American children who are being born illegitimately. The thing that Sorokin saw in the 60s. And look at his conclusion. Sorokin was convinced by studies he carried out that society can only survive if strong families exist and sexual activities are restricted within marriage. Period. Period. Again, here are studies. You just study society. You look at what's going on, the way they handle their sexuality, and you can conclude, you know what. I came across this phrase here, that the foundation of any human civilization is a moral and healthy sexual constitution. Everything else is window dressing. Now, these are very strong words, very strong words. But I believe that there's an element of truth in that. Now, let me go further and put this statement that actually morality is a national security matter. That wrong or inappropriate information on sex or sexuality or immorality can actually be a weapon of mass destruction. In other words, sex is not something to fool around with. It's not just, oh, it's my right, oh, it's my sexual rights and reproductive rights and what have you, all these big words we're using today. If you fool around with sex, sexual activity, it can turn out to be a weapon of mass destruction. And this is what you're seeing around the world. Let me give you some information now on comprehensive sexuality education. What is this thing? You know, we see words, sometimes we use it, but sometimes we may not really know what is behind this. And a lot of the times it is also deliberately hidden so that we don't get to see the bottom of it. I've done a lot of research on this matter, and let me show you the philosophy behind comprehensive sexuality education. One, it is rights-based. Two, it is gender-based. Three, seeks to change society by changing gender norms. Okay. Mark the words, seeks to change society. Okay. Most people are not aware of this, but the ultimate goal, the destination, is to actually change society. It teaches youth to advocate for their sexual rights, since, according to them, they believe that sexual rights are from birth to death. So, a 4-year-old has sexual rights. A 6-year-old has sexual rights. That is the philosophy behind. This thing is obsessed with sexual pleasure. Sexual pleasure. And it advocates for sexual freedom with no restrictions. I.e., if somebody wants to experiment, if a kid wants to experiment, let them do it. Now, not at the time. Quickly, 15 points. I'll just go quickly on. This thing sexualizes children. All right. It normalizes child sex, or this desensitizes children to sexual things. May give examples of children having sex, or imply many of their peers are sexually active, may glamorize sex, use graphic materials, teach explicit sexual vocabulary, or encourage discussion of sexual experience. All this sexualizes children. Two, it teaches children to consent to sex. Okay, I don't have time to read all that because of time. It normalizes anal and oral sex. It promotes homosexual and bisexual behavior. It teaches children about sexual pleasure. So I can read. Teaches children about sexual pleasure, may tell them they are entitled to or have a right to sexual pleasure, or may encourage children to seek out sexual pleasure. Promote self or mutual masturbation. That masturbation is okay, there's nothing wrong. At least nobody will get pregnant, nobody will get an STI. So engage in it, there's nothing wrong. I met a gentleman, a group came to his school. He was in S1 and told them, you don't need girls. And so this group gave them artificial female genitalia and said, you leave, the real guys where you may get a disease, or you may get a girlfriend. You use this. The boys used that. By S3, this boy was so sexualized, he raped a girl. He raped a girl. And he said the thing was so much, it was destroying his life. It was not until he got delivered. That's when he that's what helped him. But there are people saying, nothing wrong, masturbation, no problem. It's what you can use. It's the alternative. Eroticizes and glamorizes condom use. Protects sex and all that. It promotes early sexual independence. It fails to establish abstinence or purity as the goal. It does not. Okay? For young children, for young people. It promotes gender confusion. It teaches or is open to abortion and contraception. Well, 10-year-old, we've already heard about it. I mean, the first presenter already talked about it. That is part of comprehensive sexuality education. And you see, the unfortunate thing is that they come and the guys are, oh, you see, children are getting pregnant, so let's do this. Listen to me, friends. It is the same people who are sexualizing children who deliberately get children sexualized and engage in sexual issues. Then they come out the other side and offer a solution. Oh, now you see, children are doing this. Now I think we need to do this. Now therefore we need to legalize abortion. So that the same people who on one hand get children sexualized, then on the other hand, they pretend to come with a solution. But remember, the goal is to change society. Okay? Remember, that's a goal. Next, promotes peer-to-peer sex education and sexual rights advocacy. It undermines traditional values and beliefs. Those are old-fashioned. Those ones can't work. That violates and undermines parental rights. They want children to move away from the values that their parents have, but also it undermines parents' rights. In that, I mean, when you come and give my 10-year-old contraceptives, or you give my 10-year-old, you do something, and I'm not aware as a parent, you have already undermined my parent rights. And this is something that comprehensive sexual education seeks to do. That's why you hear of youth-friendly corner in medical service. This or that. Youth-friendly corner is nothing other than really robbing away in broad daylight of parental rights. If my child is pregnant, if my child has HIV, if my child has anything, I want to be the first to know. That's a parental matter. It's a parental matter where parents should be at the forefront of dealing with that. But you see, that takes a time. Now, that is deliberate, and that comprehensive sexual education does that. It refers children to harmful resources. Okay? Refers children to harmful websites, to harmful materials outside or outside entities. May also specifically refer children to Planned Parenthood or our affiliates, the affiliates and partners. Like here, I mean, they direct our children to go where they will get, things that they're offering. Without parental knowledge, without parental consent, without parental involvement. That we are seeing it in our country, we are seeing it around the world. And these are some of the things that are fueling this. Now, let me an idea where this whole thing came from. It comes from a gentleman by the name Alfred Kinsey, who did a study in 1948, and his study was the foundation actually of sexual education or sexual knowledge for about 40 years in Western universities. Unfortunately, his studies were fraudulent. They were not genuine studies, they were fraudulent. You imagine, he was a zoologist, and yet he was like the expert on on sexual matters. Wasn't even a doctor, wasn't even a medical doctor. But anyway, there it is. Now, his fraudulent research is what gave rise to the Sexuality Information and Education Council of the United States. This is the group that developed sex education, because sex education was first introduced in 1964. Prior to that, there was no sex education. And the objective, as you can see there, was a humanist ideology, okay? And you imagine the few, referring even to Lucifer magazine. So anyway, it was 1964 on science, which was fake. Okay, I think some of this, because of time, let me just ignore. Now, the experts on children at the time when sex education was introduced did not identify knowledge on sex and sexuality as prime knowledge that children need. No. For them, they realize children need to learn to reason, need to learn to submit to authority, they need to learn moral thinking, task achievement, self-actualization, mutual cooperation, and social interaction. Those are the things that children need. But now here they come. Oh, children need sexual information. They don't need that sexual information. They don't. All right. Okay, I think I can skip a lot of this. Now, some of the sex education, actually, one of the materials say that later on, fathers will no longer have any authority in the home. And you wonder, how is this possible? Here we are teaching sex education, but how is that connected to fathers not having? You see, because there was an issue of changing society. And how do you remove men from having authority, or fathers from having authority? Bring things like pornography, attack the men, of course, and then who are the heads of the family? They fall down, then marriage is affected, and then eventually children are now taught this comprehensive sexuality education. Now, look at the effects. Look at the effects. As soon as sex education started, you can see the cases of gonorrhea and some of these STI. It was low. As soon as sexual education or sex education started, it began to increase. As though that's not enough, look at teenage pregnancies. It rose up. See? Look at underage live births, Okay. The blue line shows what happened, but the red line shows you the children who have been aborted. So you can see that actually more children, more pregnancies took place after sex education started. And then look at single parenthood and female-headed homes. Things were just a bit slow, normal, or whatever. Once sex education started, look at how high the thing went up. Then, sexual abuse, children's sexual abuse. Do you know that America now is one of the most unsafe countries for children? Well, they teach sex education, but look at sexual abuse. High, very high. The impact of sex education. Now, this one, they never been used to, it was never reported before. It was off the chart. But now, children who are raped in schools, okay, in school rapes, there you are. It was not even there before, but now it has begun to appear. Now, as I conclude, what's the way forward? The first thing that needs to be done is to strengthen families. Whatever can be done to strengthen families should be done, because teenage pregnancy is a symptom of broken families, period. Once families begin to break, teenage pregnancies and STIs and all these other are going to rise. So we need to strengthen families as a national priority. Secondly, we need to strengthen parenting skills that will enable parents inculcate values, morals, and character in their children. Because what children need is not knowledge on sexual things that, this is how you feel, do this. They don't need that. What they need are values, morals, and character. They need to be helped to be. There's time for innocence. And every child has their own internal clock where they learn, where they grow in their sexuality. Coming and beginning to give just general information to children is actually traumatizing many children, because we grow in 4 areas. We grow physically, we grow emotionally, we grow spiritually, but we also grow in our sexuality. And just like every child does not walk at the same time, they don't speak at the same time, they don't crawl at the same time. In the same way, they don't grow in the same way in their sexuality. And therefore, each child needs to be allowed to have those years of innocence. And then as they begin to get aware of their sexuality, when they begin to ask questions and things like that, then the parent helps them to in that area. That's what we recommend. Rather than getting people from outside and then, you don't know what they're teaching them, you don't know the motives and all that kind of stuff. Then we want to promote a parent-led initiative where parents can actually parent their children in the area of sexuality. I didn't mention to you, but since 2006, we have a parenting course that we teach parents. And we teach parents to handle their children in totality, including the area of sexuality. And guess what? Once a parent has understood that, they don't need somebody else to come and show them. The only thing the children need is human reproduction, which is what we did. I mean, in biology, because we do plant reproduction, we do animal reproduction, and we do human reproduction, just as a biology class. That's all. But not this thing where now we're going to this and the other, and this is how you do this, this is how it feels, we don't need that. I mean, we just did biology, human reproduction, biology. And that's all a child needs from school. And the rest should be done at home with the parents, because sexuality is a very intricate thing. It's not that anybody can teach anyone. Not anybody can teach it. And it needs to be taught in that context where the child is loved, where the child is cared for, in a family setting. That is the best place where this should be done. Yes, a lot of our parents have not known that, but they can be helped and can be equipped because they're the best people to do it, especially in today's world where you can't trust anybody. The parent is the best. We taught our children sexuality education. We didn't give to any school or anyone. We did ourselves, and our children understood it. Now, we want to promote sex education that builds values. No, not sex education. Education that builds values most high. Another education will help young people to develop character rather than just skills only. Then we need, as a matter of priority, to promote risk avoidance, that is sexual purity among youths. This idea of telling youth that, oh, you know what, yeah, you should abstain, but in case you find you can't hold it, do this to them. If you do that to your children, you have not communicated. Actually, what you've communicated is go ahead and do this. I spoke to parents in Kawempe many years ago, and we had a meeting where we had both parents and the youth. We talk about HIV and parenting. So we first had a plenary with both parents and children. Then after a while, we separated them. My team took the children, I stayed with the parents. So after when I opened up the floor, I saw a very young parent in invited comment, rush, came and took the microphone. And he said, actually, I'm not a parent, but I'm glad I've had this opportunity to say something about what you, our parents, are doing here to us. He said, when we're about to go to school, you, our parents, you come and get condoms and you put in our suitcases. You parents, you come and get contraceptives and you put in our suitcases. What do you think we are? You parents, we don't want this. This was a child saying. So parents thought, oh, you see, yeah, you know, they better be protected, you know. You are actually destroying that child. Young people need to be challenged to rise to a higher moral order. They need to be challenged to go a step higher, rather than just mediocre. You see, well, yeah, you just, yeah. No, yeah, you want transformation, young people need a challenge, and they can actually do it. And so they need one message, not you do this one, and in case you can, that one you have not communicated, you are actually destroyed that young person. They need one message. Yes, will some of them fall? Yes, some will fall. But those are now where you pick up and you help them to learn a lesson from where they failed. And that's what parenting is all about. That in parenting, we help our children to learn lessons. If they make a mistake, yes, we show them how to learn a lesson from their mistakes. And that's normal. And that's part of growing up. And that's part of learning. And that's part of parenting. And that's a part of learning not to do or not repeat the same things. Then we need to restore public morality and remove the sex-saturated society or situation that we find ourselves in today. And finally, as I've already said, when teenage pregnancies occur or things like that, let the parent be at the forefront of it. Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate, but let me handle my daughter, let me handle my son. If he has made the girl pregnant, we will talk. We will use that opportunity to parent and to show them what not to do.